Prologue. They say it takes 10,000 hours to master something. It took me half that just to fail. My name is Leo Martinez, but my friends call me Slow-Mo Leo. The nickname is pretty self-explanatory. When my college buddies back in the States were juniors, I was grinding through my 5th German language course. When they were graduating and getting jobs, I was on my 3rd attempt at a foundational engineering class. When they were getting married and having kids, I had finally managed to sample every single terrible dish in the university cafeteria. A lot of people ask me why I chose to study in Germany. The official story, because German public universities are tuition-free. Their engineering programs are world-renowned for their rigor, and I wanted to walk in the footsteps of giants like Goethe, Beethoven, and Einstein. The real story. My SAT scores were in that awkward gray area, and an admissions consultant told me, German universities are easy to get into, hard to get out of. Just get your foot in the door. The words easy to get in lit up my brain. As for the hard to get out part, well, when you're young, you think you're the chosen one. You think other people fail because they don't work hard enough. Me? I survived 4 years of high school calculus. I could handle anything. 5 years later, I was standing in the Frankfurt airport, clutching a one-way ticket back to the U.S., my mind a highlight reel of my time abroad. A degree? Nope. A diploma? Don't have one. But I did have $1 million business idea and the soul of a Food Network star, forged in the fires of German culinary deprivation. And this story starts with my tragic, tear-stained history with German food. Chapter 1. My first kiss with a German potato and my first existential crisis 5 years ago, I landed at Frankfurt Airport, dragging 2 massive suitcases and hauling a hiking backpack. It was September. The German sky was a fake-looking, brilliant blue, and the air was so crisp it felt like it had been run through a filter. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was about to embark on the epic next chapter of my life. First stop, the university cafeteria or the Mensa. I grabbed a tray and, with the reverence of a pilgrim, surveyed the legendary German university dining hall. With German industry being so advanced, I figured the cafeteria had to be some futuristic marvel. Maybe they had those nutritional paste capsules from sci-fi movies, one-and-done meals to save time for serious research. Then I saw it, a sight I will never forget. 3 pale, white sausages lying side by side like chubby, freshly bathed babies. 2 boiled potatoes, their skins split open to reveal a starchy, bland-looking interior. A dollop of brown gravy that looked like the byproduct of a failed chemistry experiment. On the side, a few slices of pickles, a sad, yellowish green. The price for this platter of despair, 8.50 euros. My immediate thought was, this has to be the appetizer. The main course is coming next. I stood there with my tray, waiting. I waited as people maneuvered around me. I waited as the lunch lady gave me a weird look. I waited until I realized this was the main course. As I found a seat, I tried to psych myself up. It's fine. Generations of Germans grew up on this. How bad can it be? Maybe it just doesn't look great. The flavor is probably... I took my first bite of the sausage. How to describe it? It tasted of sausage. Not in a good way, not in a bad way. It just existed. It wasn't savory or salty or juicy. It offered no stimulation to my taste buds whatsoever. It was like chewing on the concept of a sausage rather than an actual food. My second bite was the boiled potato. The moment it hit my tongue, I had a flashback to my high school biology textbook to a diagram of a starch molecule. I could feel my own salivary amylase go to work, breaking the potato down into maltose, sensing the weight. Was I eating lunch or conducting an experiment? Third, the pickle. Sour. Just pure, unadulterated sourness. No sweetness, no complexity, just a straight jab to the jaw of my palate. I looked around the room. The German students were eating without a change in expression. Some of them were washing down a rock-hard bread roll with just a glass of water. Their placid, unbothered expressions reminded me of desert animals in a documentary, calmly chewing on a cactus. I had 3 introductory lectures that afternoon, but my mind was consumed by a single question. How could anyone eat this for their entire life? Chapter 2. The first punch from a German university and the birth of a chef if German food was a shock to my system. A German university was a shock to my soul. On the first day of registration, I received my course syllabus. Thickness, 1 inch. Language: German. My German proficiency at the time. I could confidently say Guten Tag and Danke, and I could spell my own name. The first lecture, the professor walked in exactly on time. No small talk, no welcoming remarks for the international students. He just fired up his PowerPoint and began. His speaking pace was like a German listening exercise on 1.5x speed. I took out my audio recorder and notebook, ready to be baptized by knowledge. 10 minutes in, I gave up taking notes and just stared blankly at the formulas on the screen. 20 minutes in, I started analyzing the architectural style of the lecture hall. 30 minutes in, I began contemplating the big questions. Who am I? Where am I? Why did I come here? 40 minutes in, I pulled out my phone, opened a translation app, and started taking pictures of the slides to translate them word for word. I signed up for 4 classes my first semester. Sounds reasonable, right? For classes a semester back home would be a breeze. But in Germany, 4 classes meant one class had a 3-hour lecture and a 2-hour discussion section each week, plus a minimum of 50 pages of academic German reading. Another class had no final exam, just a 30-page term paper, a Hausarbeit. The professor's instructions were, please choose a topic that interests you, related to the course, and conduct an in-depth study. Are there any specific formatting requirements? I asked. He smiled. Just standard academic conventions. Is there a word count limit? He kept smiling. In German academia, we value quality, not quantity. Okay, so how many sources should I be citing? His smile widened. Generally, for a 30-page paper, somewhere between 50 and 80 cited works is a reasonable range. 50 to 80. The only thought in my head was, is this guy serious? He was. My life that first semester fell into a brutal rhythm. 8 a.m. Wake up, chew on 2 slices of toast. I'd already accepted this bleak reality. 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Lectures. 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Lunch, the sausage and potato combo, day after day. 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Library, reading academic papers. Average time to look up one word, 30 seconds. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Dinner, more toast, occasionally a frozen pizza from the supermarket. 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. Homework and prepping for discussion sections. 12 a.m. Collapse. After 3 months of this, my German reading speed had skyrocketed from 3 pages an hour to 5. My German classmates could read 50 pages in that time. The week before midterms, I finally broke. It wasn't because of the academic pressure. It was because I was desperate to eat something warm, something with flavor, something that reminded me of home. At 11 p.m., I ransacked my dorm room pantry. A box of Kraft mac and cheese that expired 2 months ago, half a bag of potatoes, 3 eggs, a wilted scallion, and a bottle of soy sauce. I boiled some water, made the mac and cheese, fried an egg to put on top, and sprinkled it with the sad scallion. I carried my bowl to the window and looked out at my German neighbor's kitchen, which was as pristine as a showroom. Suddenly, tears started rolling down my face. Not because I was sad, but because that bowl of mac and cheese was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. It was the first real meal I'd had in 6 months. The moment that cheesy, salty flavor hit my tongue, I had a revelation. In Germany, just getting a decent meal was harder than graduating. Chapter 3, German Cooking, a case study in having all the right tools and no idea how to use them after midterms. I moved into an apartment with a few other American students. On moving day, our German landlady came by to inspect the place. When she saw our kitchen, equipped with a single cast iron skillet we'd brought from home, 1 chef's knife, and a rice cooker, her expression was a complex mixture of pity and horror. She insisted on showing us her kitchen. It was a revelation. She had at least a dozen different pots and pans, a grill pan for steaks, a deep stock pot, a tall pasta pot, a tiny pan just for frying a single egg, a vegetable steamer, a non-stick saucepan, a copper pot for making sweets, all hanging neatly on the wall like an arsenal. Then there were the gadgets, a bread knife, a carving knife, a vegetable knife, a peeler, a tool specifically for digging the eyes out of potatoes, an egg slicer, a garlic press, a cheese grater, a pizza cutter. But the most shocking part was her collection of measuring cups and a digital kitchen scale. She explained that for any recipe, she follows the instructions to the letter. Every seasoning measured to the gram, every liquid to the milliliter. What if you don't have a recipe? I asked. She froze, as if the concept had never occurred to her. Without a recipe, what would you make? I looked at her, then back at our kitchen with its lonely skillet, and I suddenly understood why Germany was considered a culinary wasteland. It wasn't a lack of good ingredients or tools. It was because they had turned the art of cooking into a science experiment. An incident a few weeks later confirmed my theory. My next-door neighbor, a German guy named Maximilian, a mouthful, so I just called him Max, knocked on our door, looking embarrassed. He asked if he could watch me cook. He said that whenever he walked past our apartment, he smelled something incredible, a smell he'd only ever encountered in the American-style barbecue joints in the city. I told him sure, I was just about to make some pulled pork. He took out a small notebook and a pen and sat at our small kitchen table, looking as serious as if he were in a lecture. I started by heating some oil and adding brown sugar to make a base for the barbecue sauce. How many grams of sugar? He asked. About a handful, I replied. He stared at me. How many grams is a handful? You just eyeball it. He kept probing. How many milliliters of oil? Just enough to cover the bottom of the pan. What defines cover? He started drawing a diagram of the pan in his notebook. Then I seared the pork shoulder. How long do you sear it for? Until it's browned on all sides. What shade of brown? Is there a Pantone color code for it? I was speechless. Finally, I added the rest of the ingredients: ketchup, vinegar, spices. How many grams of paprika? How many shakes of garlic powder? I took a deep breath. Max, listen to me. The soul of American home cooking is, in the words, a dash of this and a pinch of that. You can't measure those with a scale. He looked utterly confused. Then how do you guarantee it tastes the same every time? I laughed. We don't. We just guarantee one thing, that it's delicious. That night, he had his first bite of authentic, slow-cooked pulled pork. He was silent for a few seconds. Then his eyes started to well up. Leo, he said, holding his plate, his voice trembling. I'm 23 years old. I had no idea meat could taste this good. In that moment, I felt a mix of pride and pity. Pride that I had introduced another international friend to the glory of American comfort food. Pity because what on earth had this poor guy been eating for the last 23 years? Chapter 4. Failing an exam and the bizarrely Zen German attitude toward retake sophomore year. I failed a class for the first time. It was a foundational course, engineering mechanics. To be honest, I thought I had studied pretty hard. I went through the problem sets 3 times, memorized all the formulas, and did the last 5 years of practice exams. I walked into the exam room feeling cautiously optimistic. Then I saw the test. 5 long-form problems. The first was a standard problem. I could do it. The second was a variation. I thought about it and figured I could muddle through. The third was something I'd never seen before, but I felt like I could probably derive a solution from what I'd learned. The fourth was a complete mystery. I skipped it. The fifth looked like a trickier version of the first problem, but something was off. I spent the full 2.5 hours writing, filling every page of the exam booklet. When I turned it in, I thought, I should pass, right? Even if I don't, it can't be that bad. A week later, the grades were posted. I stood in front of the bulletin board, scanning the sea of student ID numbers for mine. Found it. Next to it, the score, 5.0. In the German grading system, 1.0 is an A, 4.0 is the lowest passing grade, and 5.0 means you failed. Utterly, I stared at that bright red 5.0, my mind a complete blank. A German classmate patted me on the shoulder. First time, I nodded. He gave me the knowing smile of a veteran. Don't worry, I was the same way my first time. You get used to it. How many have you failed? I asked. He held up 3 fingers. 3 classes? He shook his head. You've retaken an exam 3 times? He shook his head again. Then what does that mean? He said calmly, I've failed this class 3 times. This was my 4th attempt. I finally passed. My jaw dropped. The first time, I didn't study enough, so I failed. The second time, I studied, but the exam was too hard, so I failed. The third time, I studied even harder, but I got the flu on exam day, so I failed. This time, I finally passed, he said with a laugh, like he was recounting a funny story, not a traumatic history of academic failure. Doesn't that bother you? I asked. He looked at me, puzzled, and asked back, why would it? If you don't pass an exam, you just take it again next time. We Germans have plenty of time. In that moment, I finally understood what easy to get in, hard to get out really meant. Back in the U.S., taking a victory lap for a fifth year was a big deal, something you had to sheepishly explain to your parents. In Germany, graduating late was the norm. Graduating on time was breaking news. An upperclassman once told me about a guy in his department who had been a student for 12 years and still hadn't graduated. Not because he wasn't smart, but because he worked part-time, traveled, fell in love, came back to take a class or two, got tired of studying, and went back to work again. His professors would see him on campus and say, "Hey, long time no see. Back for a couple of classes." And he would reply, completely serious, "I'll try one this semester, and if I'm not too tired, I'll take another one next semester." And the professor would nod and say, "Excellent. Have fun studying. Have fun. Have fun studying." In my entire academic career, that was a phrase I thought was exclusively reserved for kindergartners. Chapter 5, 1,500 Ways to Cook a Sausage, and my culinary awakening after failing that exam. I was depressed for about one day. Not because I have a great attitude, but because the next day, I was hungry again. Hunger is the most primal human motivator. It pushed our ancestors out of Africa, led to the invention of agriculture, and inspired countless culinary masterpieces. In Germany, hunger pushed me into the kitchen. During that period, I went into a cooking frenzy. At first, it was just about comforting my American stomach. Then it evolved into a kind of performance art. I was going to use the limited ingredients available in a German supermarket to create the unlimited flavors of home. In a German supermarket, the meat section is about 90% pork products. Sausages, chops, ground pork, pork knuckle, pork belly. The pig is truly king here. I learned that there are over 1,500 types of sausage in Germany. 1,500. I did the math. If I ate a different kind every single day, it would take me over 4 years to try them all. That means a German person could eat a new type of sausage every morning from the day they were born until they graduated college and still have leftovers. I began to systematically study these sausages. Some were for frying, some for boiling, some for eating raw. Yes, Germans eat raw ground pork on bread. It's called Met, and the first time I saw it, I thought I was hallucinating. Some tasted like hot dogs, some like kielbasa, some like salami, and some, I don't know what they tasted like. They just tasted German. Then I discovered the most magical corner of the German supermarket, the spice aisle. The selection was pathetically small. Basically, it was salt, pepper, paprika, caraway, rosemary, and thyme. That was it. The first time I walked into a Turkish market, I almost cried with joy. They had real cumin, not the mild German version, coriander seeds, fennel, dried mint, sumac, and every kind of pepper imaginable, hot, mild, smoky, fragrant. It was then that I truly understood why Germany was a food desert. It wasn't a lack of good ingredients. It was that they had no idea how to combine them. It was like a world-class symphony orchestra that had all the best instruments, but only knew how to play one song. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Chapter 6. My first startup was a pulled pork stand. The turning point came during my junior year. That year, for Thanksgiving, I couldn't afford a plane ticket home. The money I earned from my part-time job went to paying for exam retake fees. I was stuck in the dorm with a bunch of other students in the same boat, a little group of Thanksgiving orphans. We decided to have a potluck. My contribution was tacos. I made a huge batch of seasoned ground beef and carnitas. The group was a mix, a few Americans, a girl from Vietnam, a guy from Thailand, and 2 Germans, one of whom was my neighbor, Max. When the food came out, everyone went wild. The 2 Germans looked like they were having a religious experience with their first bite. The Vietnamese girl grabbed my arm and said, "Leo, can you teach me how to make this? I will pay you." The Thai guy just asked, "Have you ever thought about selling this? I would buy it every day." I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured they were just starving for decent international food. But that night, Max said to me, seriously, "Leo, you should think about setting up a stall. The University Mensa could really use some competition. You think people would actually buy it?" I asked. He shot back, "How long has it been since you went to the Wednesday market?" The Wednesday market was a weekly open-air market in our university town where farmers sold produce and vendors sold street food. It was a popular lunch spot for students. The next Wednesday, I went to do some market research. The international food on offer consisted of 1 Turkish kebab stand, 1 Vietnamese spring roll stand. They only sold pre-fried, lukewarm spring rolls, in a stall claiming to sell Chinese-style fried noodles, which turned out to be spaghetti tossed in sweet chili sauce. In that moment, a fire ignited within me. A fire fueled by my resentment of German food, my pride in American cooking, and the simple fact that I was really, really hungry for something good. A week later, my first food stall was open for business. The product? Pulled pork sliders. Why pulled pork? Because it was easy to scale. One massive pot of pork could last for hours. Served on a simple bun with some coleslaw, it was the perfect meal. My equipment, a spice blend I ordered from Amazon, a pork shoulder from the German supermarket, onions, buns, and a hot plate and slow cooker for my dorm room. Startup cost, about $50. Sale price, $5 for 2 sliders. The first day, I only made enough for about 40 servings, terrified I wouldn't sell out. I set up at 11 a.m. By 10:45, 3 people were already waiting in line. At 11:05, I sold my first order. By 11:30, I was completely sold out. A dozen more people who showed up late had to be turned away, looking devastated. One older German man even asked me, "Will you be here tomorrow? Can I place an order in advance?" When I got home that night, I counted my earnings. I had sold everything. Gross revenue, $100. After costs, I had made about $40 in profit. $40 wasn't a lot of money, but in that moment, I was happier than if I had won a scholarship. It was the first time, on German soil, that I had made other people happy with my own 2 hands. With food. Chapter 7, when a German asks for mildly spicy, and I tell them, "For you, that's probably extremely hot." After the success of my first market day, I fell into a strange loop. Start of the semester. Attend classes diligently, vowing to study hard and pass at least 3 courses. Mid-semester. Realize the classes are harder than expected. Become anxious. Use cooking to relieve anxiety. End of semester. Cram for finals. Inevitably fail a class. And then, use cooking to console myself. The more classes I failed, the better my cooking became. The better my cooking became, the less I wanted to study. The less I wanted to study, the more classes I failed. It was a perfect, vicious cycle. By my 3rd year, I had earned less than a third of my required credits, but I had perfected over a dozen different barbecue sauce recipes. I started to study the German palate. At first, I assumed they would prefer milder flavors, so I made my barbecue sauce on the sweeter side. The feedback from my German customers, "This is delicious, but could it be a little more savory?" So I adjusted the recipe, adding more salt and vinegar. The feedback, "Perfect. This is the taste." Then I tried introducing a spicy version. The first time I offered a mildly spicy pulled pork, I made sure to warn every customer, "This has a little kick. Are you okay with that?" The typical German response was, "Mildly spicy? No problem. I can handle spice. I've been to Mexico." Then they would take their first bite. 3 seconds later, they'd be chugging water. 5 seconds later, sweating. 30 seconds later, the entire water bottle would be empty. Their face beet red, but they would still try to play it cool. Yes, definitely mild. I'm fine. My internal monologue. With acting skills like that, you could win an Oscar. Eventually, I learned to calibrate. When a German asked if they could handle the spice, I'd just ask, "Have you ever had a kebab with the spicy sauce?" If they said yes, I'd give them the normal spicy version. If they said no, I'd give them the real mild version, the one suitable for toddlers. The German understanding of spicy is roughly equivalent to a Floridian's understanding of a blizzard. They've heard of it, but to experience it firsthand requires significant mental and physical preparation. Chapter 8. 4th year, I opened a cafeteria. With only 4 tables, my business took a leap forward in my 4th year. The winter that year was especially cold, and my academic record was especially glorious. I had accumulated 5 failed courses. For 2 of them, I'd already used my first retake. For 1, I had used my second. 2 more were on thin ice. According to university rules, you get 3 attempts to pass a class. 3 strikes, and you're out. You either have to change your major, drop out, or transfer to another university and start over. My German friends tried to console me. "It's fine. It happens to a lot of people." There was a guy in our class who took 4 tries to pass a course, and now he works for BMW. "How many years did it take him to graduate?" I asked. I think 8 years? Or maybe 9. I'm not sure, but he graduated eventually. 8 years. My thought at the time, World War II was shorter than that, and I'm still working on my bachelor's degree. That winter, my dorm's common kitchen received an unexpected visitor. She was an American freshman, only 3 months into her German journey. She looked pale and thin, with the hollowed-out eyes that were the classic symptom of early-stage life as a foreign student in Germany. "Hey," she said, "I heard you're a really good cook." "I do okay," I said. "Can you teach me how to make anything that's simple? I've been living on bread and frozen pizza for 3 months, and I think I'm losing my mind." "Sure," I said. "I'm about to make dinner now. You can watch." That night, I made barbecue ribs, garlic butter broccoli, and scrambled eggs with cheese. The freshman stood by and watched the entire time, silent. When the food was ready, she took one bite, and tears immediately started streaming down her face. "Leo," she sobbed, "I miss home." In that moment, I understood something profound. For a student abroad, food isn't just sustenance. It's a cure for homesickness. From that day on, my kitchen became a social hub. At first, it was just a few American friends coming over for a free meal. Soon, word spread to other international students, and even a few curious Germans. At its peak, I had over a dozen people for dinner, our small common kitchen packed, as tightly as Grand Central Station during rush hour. Someone suggested, "You should just open a small cafeteria. You're barely going to class anyway," which was true. "You can just cook out of the dorm, and we'll all pay you." I hesitated. "Is that legal?" He thought for a moment. "Probably not. But it's better than you failing out of school, right?" I couldn't argue with that logic. And so my underground cafeteria was born. Location: the dorm's common kitchen. Hours: 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. daily, with a lunch service on weekends. Menu: change daily, depending on what I found at the supermarket. Price: a small, symbolic fee, mainly to cover costs. Customers: mostly American students, a few other international students who had heard the rumors, and a tiny handful of brave Germans. My most popular dishes: pulled pork, universally made my German friends question their entire culinary upbringing. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple, healing, the ultimate student comfort food. Chili, a weekend-only special. $5 for all you can eat. Always a full house. Tacos, reserved for special occasions and required a 1-week advance reservation. Breakfast burritos, a late-night special, exclusively for students on the verge of a finals week breakdown. Once, a German girl finished one of my breakfast burritos and told me with utmost seriousness, "Leo, you know, this is the first time in my life I've been emotionally moved by a tortilla." I asked her, "What were the tortillas you ate before like?" She described them: dry, cold, brittle, flavorless, just a vehicle for some sauce. I thought about the sad bread rolls in the German cafeteria. It wasn't a bread roll. It was a bread-shaped starch product. In that moment, I gained a deeper understanding of German food culture. It's not that they don't want to eat delicious food. It's that they don't know that a tortilla can be warm and soft, that food can have so many different textures and flavors. It's like someone who has only ever heard "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" suddenly hearing a Beethoven symphony for the first time. The shock is soul deep. Chapter 9. When I couldn't write my thesis, I'd just go make some chili 5th year. My academic progress: 2/3 of my credits completed. My failure record: 7 cumulative failed courses. 3 I had managed to pass on a retake, 2 I was still struggling with, and 2 I had completely given up on. My age: on average, 2 years older than my German classmates and 3 years older than my American peers back home. My mental state: zen, utterly and completely zen. It's a hard state to describe. The anxiety was just gone. When I saw underclassmen crying over failing their first exam, I would pat them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, it's okay. I failed more classes than you've had hot meals." When I heard people talking about graduating on time, I would just smile. On time? That was a story for other people. My life script was a remake of Van Wilder. My German classmates were a revolving door. The ones I met when I first arrived had graduated. The ones I met after that had also graduated. The new ones were getting close. Only I remained, like an old oak tree, rooted to this place, unmovable. My professors knew me by name. "Leo, good to see you back this semester. Which course are you taking?" "Yours, Professor." In my 3rd time, he would just nod. 3rd time's the charm. Keep at it. 3rd time's the charm felt like it was invented just for me. That year, I finally made it to my senior thesis. My chosen topic: a comparative study of American and German food cultures. Yes, you read that right. I was an engineering major writing my thesis on food. Not because I changed majors, but because my advisor said to me, Leo, you seem to have a real passion for food. Why don't you combine your passion with your studies? Our department has a track for cultural studies, you know. I was so moved I almost hugged him. This was what a truly great professor was, tailoring the education to the student. The writing process was surprisingly smooth. Not because I had a hidden talent for academic writing, but because I knew this topic inside and out. When I wrote about German perceptions of American cuisine, I just used Max as a case study. When I wrote about a comparison of culinary methodologies, I described my landlady's kitchen. When I wrote about the process of dietary adaptation for students abroad, I just wrote about myself. The only problem was that writing about food constantly made me hungry. And when I got hungry, I'd go to the kitchen and make a big pot of chili. The smell of the simmering chili would drift into my room. I'd take a deep breath, and the inspiration would flow. My thesis and my chili grew up together, side by side. When I submitted the final draft, the thesis was 50 pages long with a 10-page appendix, filled with my personal recipes. My advisor read the whole thing and was silent for a long time. Professor, is there a problem? I asked nervously. He looked up and said with a straight face, Leo, this appendix, can I get a copy of these recipes? I'd like to try them at home. Of course. Also, he continued, your thesis has been approved. It's not a traditional engineering paper, but as a piece of cultural research, it's outstanding. This recipe section, in particular, is highly valuable. In that moment, I almost cried. Not because my thesis was approved, though that was a huge relief, but because I had finally, on German soil, found my own value. Chapter 10. One last exam, and a turning point with my thesis approved. I had just 2 more courses to pass on retakes. One of them was fluid mechanics, a class I had already failed twice. The month before my 3rd and final attempt, I made a decision. I wasn't going to study. It wasn't that I was giving up. It was that I genuinely believed studying was pointless. Me and fluid mechanics were just not compatible. I couldn't understand the concepts, I couldn't solve the problems, and trying to cram any more would be a waste of time. Instead, I spent that entire month developing new recipes. I created a special menu for my fellow struggling students, the Failure Feast, a massive plate of barbecue ribs, signifying that from rock bottom, the only way is up. The Finals Fuel, a super spicy chili with cornbread, designed for late-night paper writing. The Taste of Home, the perfect mac and cheese for when you're feeling homesick. The Graduation Gala, a full-on taco bar with all the fixings to celebrate finally making it out. More and more students started coming for my food. Some would even take the train from other cities just to get a plate of Leo's cooking. A girl from Berlin came one weekend. After her meal, she told me, Leo, you know your food is better than any American-style restaurant in Berlin. You've tried all of them? I asked. She nodded. I've been on a quest to find a taste of home. I tried them all and was disappointed every time. She ate 3 helpings of chili that day and took a container of pulled pork to go. Watching her walk away, a thought popped into my head. Maybe I don't need to graduate. No, not like that. What I meant was, maybe I can survive in Germany without a diploma. Chapter 11. From underground cafeteria to legit restaurant. All it took was a push. I failed my 3rd attempt at fluid mechanics. According to university policy, I had to either change my major or withdraw. There was a 3rd, obscure option, apply for a special exemption if I could prove I had an extraordinary talent in another field. I want to see my advisor. He reviewed my case and was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Leo, I remember your thesis was excellent, especially the appendix. Thank you, Professor. Is your cafeteria still in operation? He asked. It is, I admitted, though it's not exactly legal. He smiled. And this is just a hypothetical, if you return that cafeteria into a legitimate business, you might be able to apply for graduation based on extraordinary talent. I was stunned. He continued, the German education system is rigorous, but it's not inflexible. If you can demonstrate outstanding achievement in a field, the university can make an exception and grant a degree. Your thesis was on food culture. If you can turn food culture into a successful enterprise, what better practical application is there? In that moment, it felt like a new path had opened up in my life. Not the traditional graduate, then get a job path, but a uniquely German study while building a business path. Professor, I asked, do you really think I can do it? He asked me a question in return. Why do you think the Germans love your pulled pork so much? I thought about it. Because it's delicious? He nodded. Exactly. That's the only reason. In Germany, delicious food is a rare commodity. If you can make something delicious, you will always have a place here. After that conversation, I started seriously looking into opening a restaurant. First, the location. The dorm was out. I found a small shop for rent on the busiest street in our university town. It used to be a kebab place, so it came with a fully equipped kitchen. Rent, $1,500 a month, not including utilities. Key money to take over the lease, $20,000. I didn't have that kind of money, but my customers did. When I announced in my underground cafeteria that I wanted to open a real restaurant, more than a dozen people immediately offered to invest. Some chipped in a few hundred, some a few thousand. One student whose family was well off asked, "Is 20 grand enough? If not, I can ask my dad to wire more." 1 week later, I had raised $35,000. The single largest investment came from my neighbor, Max. He gave me his entire year's savings from his part-time job. "Aren't you afraid I'll lose it all?" I asked him. He looked at me with his trademark German earnestness. "Leo, we Germans value planning and logic. Logically, your food is so good. How could you possibly fail?" Once again, I was deeply moved by German logic. Chapter 12. On opening day, the line went around the corner. 3 months later, Leo's Kitchen officially opened its doors. The space was small, with only 8 tables, enough to seat maybe 30 people at a time. The menu was simple: pulled pork sliders, chili bowls, mac and cheese, and a daily special. On opening day, I expected it to be quiet. After all, we were just a tiny new spot with zero advertising. Instead, we opened at 11 a.m., and by 9:30, a line had already formed outside. The first wave of customers was all familiar faces, students who had eaten in my dorm, German neighbors who had tried my food at the market, and even a couple of my professors. At 11 o'clock, service began. The pulled pork, 40 servings, sold out in 15 minutes. The chili, 30 bowls, sold out in 10 minutes. The mac and cheese, 50 portions, sold out in 20 minutes. The line outside grew longer and longer, snaking around the corner and down the next street. An elderly German woman waited in line for 40 minutes to get a bowl of chili. After she finished, she came up to me and held my hand. "Young man, that was the best chili I have ever eaten. I have lived in Germany for 60 years, and this is the first time I knew a meal could be this comforting." I asked her, "What was the chili you ate before like?" She thought for a moment. "It came from a can." From can. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just opened a restaurant. I was a culinary missionary. My mission was to show the people of Germany that there was more to life than sausages, potatoes, bread, and canned food. Our first month's revenue, $18,000. Net profit, $6,000. That was more money than I had saved by not having to pay for exam retakes. Chapter 13. A different kind of diploma. In my 10,000 hours 3 months after opening, I received a letter from the university. After reviewing my special application, the faculty senate had voted to award me a master's degree based on my thesis and my outstanding contributions to the field of cultural food dissemination. That day, I went to the university to pick up my diploma. The degree listed, Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. The thesis title, A Comparative Study of American and German Food Cultures, an analysis of student dietary adaptation and cultural identity. My advisor shook my hand, smiling. "Leo, you're the first student in the history of this department to graduate because of your cooking." I smiled back. "And you, professor, are the first professor in the history of this department to encourage a student to cook." He laughed. "Fair enough." At the graduation ceremony, I stood in my cap and gown in the grand hall with dozens of German students. Most of them had finished their degrees in 3 or 4 years. It took me 5. What did that extra year and a half get me? A thriving restaurant, a repertoire of dozens of killer recipes, hundreds of friends I made through food, and a story about how hard it is to graduate in Germany that I could tell for the rest of my life. After the ceremony, Max asked me, "So Leo, you've graduated. What's next? Are you going back to the US or staying here?" "Staying," I said. "The restaurant is just getting started. I can't leave now." "But isn't that different from your original goal when you came to Germany?" he asked. I thought for a moment and answered him seriously. Max, my original goal was to become a better version of myself. I'm still here, and I'm still trying to do that. The method has just changed. He nodded, looking like he sort of understood. I clapped him on the shoulder. One day, when you find yourself moved to tears by a really good plate of food, you'll get it. In that moment, I thought about the 10,000-hour rule. It's supposed to take 10,000 hours to become a world-class expert in something. I spent 5 years in Germany. I didn't become an engineer, but I did get my own restaurant. It took me 5,000 hours to fail at engineering. It took me the other 5,000 hours to create a pulled pork recipe that had Germans lining up around the block to buy it. The paths were different, but the destination was the same. I had made my mark on this place. Chapter 14. The Daily Grind and the German Artisan Spirit. My restaurant has been open for over a year now. Business is steady. We have lots of regulars, and we were even featured in the local newspaper's Best Eats column. The reporter who interviewed me asked, as an American student, why did you choose to open a comfort food restaurant in Germany? My honest answer was, because German food is terrible. The reporter blinked, then burst out laughing. I'm kidding, I continued. The real reason is that I wanted to show people that food has another function besides just filling your stomach. It can also heal you. The reporter nodded thoughtfully. When the article came out, the headline was, "An American Student Heals the German Stomach with Food." The comments section exploded. I've been to this place, it's legit delicious. The owner is a character. German food really is bad. Finally, someone said it out loud. I'm going to try it next week. Hope the line isn't too long. One comment from a German person really stuck with me. I lived in the U.S. for 3 years, and after coming back, I could never find good American food. Then I went to Leo's kitchen, and it was like I was back there again. Thank you, Leo, for bringing a real taste of America to my doorstep. I took a screenshot of that comment and saved it. It was the best review I had received in my entire year of business. Germans definitely have their own way of doing things. For example, my German regulars have a very German way of ordering. They never say, "I'll have whatever." They study the menu carefully and then make very specific requests. This pulled pork, can you make it with less sauce? I'm watching my sugar intake. The chili, what are the exact ingredients? What is the ratio of beans to meat? Today's special, what is the spice level precisely? Can you compare it to a jalapeno on the Scoville scale? At first, it drove me crazy, but then I got used to it. This is just how they are. They aren't trying to be difficult. They genuinely want this information. It's the same way Max asked me, how many grams of salt? It's not an argument. It's a different way of thinking. Eventually, I just added a spec sheet section to my menu. Pulled pork slider, pork content, 100 g, bun, 50 g, approximate, 450 calories. Chili bowl, bean to meat ratio, 60/40. Sodium content, approximate 1.5 g per serving. Spice scale, 1 to 5, corresponds to Scoville heat units 500 to 3000. My German customers were delighted. One old man even brought a digital food scale to the restaurant to verify my descriptions. The weights were, of course, accurate. He nodded in satisfaction and has been a regular ever since. I guess this is the German artisan spirit. Applied to cars, it gives you Mercedes and BMW. Applied to food, it taught me the meaning of precision customer service. It works. Chapter 15. Advice for future students and my German survival guide friend from back home often ask me, is it really that hard to study in Germany? My answer is, yes and no. The hard part is graduating. The German university system's reputation for being hard to get out of is no joke. The 3 strikes you're out rule for exams is real. The average graduation rate in my program was around 30%, meaning only 1 in every 3 students graduated on time. But the easy part is surviving. The cost of living is reasonable, student health insurance is comprehensive, and it's a very safe country. If you're willing to work, you can always make a life here. The real challenge is psychological. It's the pressure you feel when you watch your friends graduate and move on while you're still retaking the same class. It's when you realize you're older than everyone else in your lectures. It's when your parents ask, so, where are you graduating? And you have to give a vague, non-committal answer. That kind of pressure is tougher than any exam. My advice is this: find your anchor. For me, that anchor was the kitchen. For someone else, it might be sports or music or photography or anything that gives you a sense of belonging in a foreign country. Find it, hold on to it, and don't let go. It will save you. Also, a piece of advice for any student thinking of coming to Germany. Be prepared, the food can be a real challenge. I'm not kidding. If you don't know how to cook or have no interest in learning, I would seriously reconsider. Because here, just getting a good meal can be even harder than getting a degree. Epilogue. 5 years later, I'm writing this story in my own restaurant. It's 10 p.m., and the restaurant is closed for the night. I'm sitting at a table by the window with a late-night snack I just made for myself. A perfect, gooey grilled cheese sandwich. Outside, the quiet German street is empty except for the occasional passing cyclist. Inside, there's a warm glow from the lights and the faint, lingering smell of barbecue sauce. 5 years. From not knowing a word of German to being able to discuss spice levels with my customers. From being a guy who could burn water to someone who can make perfect chili in his sleep. From a wide-eyed international student to the owner and head chef of Leo's Kitchen. What did I lose? The chance to graduate on time. A respectable job as an engineer. What my parents would call a normal life. What did I gain? A skill. A business. A community of friends brought together by food. And the ability to make myself a great meal anytime, anywhere. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because in the end, I discovered that there isn't just one path in life. Graduating from a German university is a great achievement. But if you can't, the world doesn't end. You can always do something else. Like, for example, open a restaurant and use the cooking skills you were forced to learn by years of terrible food to show the locals what real flavor tastes like. That is also a kind of success. And, I think, a much more delicious one. I finish my sandwich and take the last sip of my drink. It tastes just right. Outside, a man on a bicycle rides past. He sees the light on in my window and gives me a friendly wave. I wave back. In this moment, I feel like I belong here. Not because I have a German degree, but because I have found my place. I spent 5 years studying in Germany and didn't get the degree I came for. But I did become a chef and a business owner. And the food is pretty damn good. The end.